Hello. Nice to see you. To see you nice. I have had one of those wonderful days where you don't really speak to anyone. I don't know, I find that really nice. It's not that I don't like speaking to people, it's just that I suppose I do so much speaking that it's nice to have a day where there is very little speaking. So yes. Okay, so we shall get on with this session. So if this is the first current viewers 0, that's a problem. Okay, you're still there. Nope, it's not. It's not a problem. Okay, so we shall begin. I'm gonna make this a bit zoomed out. It's a bit close. Okay, so we shall begin the live stream. So if this is the first time you've been on live stream, I will now inform you how it works. Basically, we do a bit of a silent sitting for 10-15 minutes, and then I do an introduction, and then after the introduction you're welcome to ask any questions. You can either call in, you need a headset with a microphone and good audio if you want to call in, and so you can call in, or you can write a question. If you want to call in, please put call me, because otherwise it's too distracting, because we're not synced. So you might call and I'm still speaking to someone else. I'm normally ahead of you, dependent on how quick the internet is. Pardon me. There might be a few passes of gas in the interim. I've got to put the picture down on me so I don't look at me while I'm speaking. Look into the camera, Lisa. So there's that, and then you can write a question as well. I might not get around to all questions dependent on how busy we are. I suspect this evening it will be less busy, so there'll be more of a chance of getting your question answered, because Europe changed times last night, and a lot of the world didn't change times. It might only be Europe that changed last night, so everyone will be confused about the time today. Don't worry if you've got a session with me this coming week. My booking app is intelligent enough to work it all out, so whatever time you booked is it's gonna be that time. You don't need to think it changes or that you need to be an hour earlier or later. Even if, like, so say America, I speak with a lot of people in America, even if America, they haven't changed, so we're an hour closer together now. it works it out as well. I've done many years of this, of doing sessions and these time changes. And when I used to do the booking myself and it wasn't computerized, it would get into a real pickle. But now it's all done by the computer, it doesn't get into a pickle, unless we get afraid and start thinking we need to do something about it. Yes, so that's that. My Skype address, if you want to ask questions, is Lisa Cairns 12. That's Lisa Cairns 12. You can find the information in the box. If you want to regularly watch my live streams, make sure that you always check my website under live streams to see if I'm streaming that night, because sometimes I travel or I do things, believe it or not, and I can't do the live stream. Yes. Can't think if there's anything else to say. Or if you want to join me in any events that I'm doing, I'm not doing any because obviously of something that's happening in the world right now. And so the only way in which you can join me is through sessions. But just know that the sessions are very booked up. So even if you get put on the waiting list, it's still quite a big waiting list, and I'm quite far ahead, quite far in advance booked. Yes. I think that's all. So now we can just go into some silent sitting, just sitting quietly, just for 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, we begin. Hello. Just have to remind myself what the title is again. The title is Knowing the Difference Between Non-Duality, right, so let me put and the person. I haven't done that title before, have I? The difference between non-duality, pardon me, sorry, and the person. The question is what does it mean, the person, and what does it mean, non-duality? So we'll start off with non-duality first. Like, what is non-duality? How many times have you done this, Lisa, in your life? So non-duality isn't intellectual. So it's often presented as intellectual because the means in which it's communicated is speaking. So people conclude naturally that it's an intellectual process or an intellectual understanding. And most people conclude and sort of give up on the search after they've got to a seeing of awareness. So their mind kind of splits, and there's some part of their mind that sees awareness or sees consciousness, and then they think, okay, that's it. But that's still an intellectual understanding, and still it's an awakening, you could say, and it's really profound, but it's still part of the mind which is awakening. And non-duality isn't intellectual. It's not a mental process. You don't get this. And what happens in that is the person then thinks, okay, I don't get it. And therefore they put it into their schemas, so their thought processes. So if they've got a schema of, I'm always last, I never understand things, maybe they're like the youngest of the family, then they put that into their schema. So the fact that they can't understand non-duality becomes a failing on the person's part, and they think they're failing. Or they could have a schema of hopelessness, like I'm hopeless, life is hopeless, everything is hopeless, and then that gets turned into hopelessness. It could also be a relief for some people if you say feel very guilty about things, to realize that you aren't the controller of your life, you aren't the doer, can be a relief for you. And all of that fits into the personality structure and the mental dynamics of the person. But that's not non-duality. I used to do it. That's like the non-duality that you take and becomes yours. And that's not what non-duality is. Non-duality is the recognition and the energetic shift that who you are is this moment, is love. You could call it love. Love. That non-duality is this moment, and this is who you truly are. What most people think themselves to be is a character moving in time. So somebody with a history and somebody with a future, and somebody that's moving through time. But this character that you assume yourself to be is a happening in this moment, but it's not actually the experiencer. And that's really profound, that realization. And there can be the intellectual realization of it, and then the energetic experience of it, where all there is, where there's this energetic shift from being something to all there is this moment. Like, this is what you are. This is all that you are. This moment. So most people would assume that I'm speaking in this moment, but actually this is life speaking. This is this moment speaking, and it's love speaking. It's the same what's happening on your side. I'm not meaning to be like, consciousness speaks here. I'm just meaning that your words don't actually come from from time. They come from this moment, and that's pretty obvious. They come from this moment. They come through a personality structure. So obviously I'm not suddenly communicating it in moon language and being woo, 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 woo. So, or dog. I'm communicating it in English through a woman born in the 80s who's of this disposition. But that's not who's actually speaking now. Where is that person, all those things that I described? They're gone in the past. It's actually this moment which is speaking. And this moment is what's watching. So this moment is perceiving life. So again, we assume that me as a separate individual is perceiving my life. Boop, 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 boop. I'm perceiving my life. But who is this person perceiving? There is nobody perceiving. There is nothing perceiving. Nothing isn't the big black hole in the middle of the universe that sucks things in and then spits them out a very, 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 very long time later. That is not what nothing is. Nothing is this moment, because this moment, it gets even deeper and more profound. This moment is not a thing. You assume in your mind it's a thing. There's things making up this moment. But you also know through your scientific exploration as a child in the classroom that everything is made up of atoms. And if everything is made up of the atoms, it means that even though there is an appearance of things, there isn't actually things. There's an appearance of matter happening, but there isn't actually matter. And if you went any deeper into science, and I'm really not a scientist, so excuse me for my mistakes, but if you open up the atoms, then the particles get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until they get to nothing. There could be something smaller again, like the Russian dolls. There could be something even smaller, but we can't perceive it with our microscopes. There could be something even smaller, but they've so far got to nothing that when you open up all the particles, there's nothing inside of them. So there is appearance of things. The atoms are lined up in certain ways. It gives the appearance of things happening. But actually, when you break it all down, there are no things. And if you go higher than atoms, you could say like the wood, no, okay, not the wood. The chair is made up from wood, and the wood is made up from like leaves and minerals and stuff from the ground. It was grown into a tree. It's made up from water, which comes from the sea. I don't know where water comes from prior to that. And this jumper is made up of like polyester and I don't know what else it's made up of. Plastic and cotton maybe. And it's weaved into a jumper, but you can keep going back and back and back. So actually, like we say, okay, we're living in a house, but if you keep breaking it down, you get down to bricks, you get down to sand, you get down to water, you keep taking it back particles or atoms and particles, and then finally it goes back to quarks, which have nothing inside of them. So in this moment, everything is appearing from not a place, not a thing. That's not something you'll ever find because it doesn't exist. So you can't ever be like, let me get out my what's that thing called? My eyeglass, magnifying glass, and look for nothing. If it's nothing, you're never going to find it because it's not a thing. So everything is appearing from no thing right now, not a thing. Which is really, really magical and mind-boggling and mind-exploding, and that everything is made from nothing and coming from nothing right now, and this is all that exists. And that's your experience. Your experience is that this doesn't come from a person. Your experience isn't that this doesn't come from time. Your experience is that there is nothing outside of this. Your experience, I think I got lost in my double negatives then. Your experience is that everything's appearing from no place. Everything's appearing from this moment. You are not watching. You are not experiencing. And there is nothing outside of what's happening now. That's your actual experience. But what happens is our mind comes in and tells us a story of something else that's happening. It tells us the story of the person, which is all fictional. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how we function and survive as like community animals. That's one of our functioning techniques. But it's not the way things are. That's our biggest mistake as humans, is the belief that thoughts are the way things are. I am not human. I am not Lisa. The curtain isn't the curtain. It is when we communicate, but in the moment, actually, everything is mystery, is beyond concepts. It's here, alive, present. And this is freedom, this realization. But again, it's not a thought, because a thought is going in time, a story is going in time. And I'm not suggesting that you should use non-duality to psychologically relieve you from problems in your life. What non-duality does is it relieves you from seeking, and it relieves you from the identification with the person, which is freedom. But it doesn't relieve you from the conditions of the person and the karma of the person. It can do through time, after the realization of it, expand, and that can get looser and looser. But that's not the point of it. And I'm not suggesting that you in any way should use non-duality to fix marital problems or fix problems with your children. There are lots of wise people out there that give advice on how to communicate better and how to assert your needs in dealing with past traumas in time. And the person, the character, it seems so confusing because I'm talking about the disidentification with the character. We think of the character as like a soul or an entity inside of us. So if I'm saying that, when I'm saying there is no person, we think that then you've got to like walk around like some sort of empty robot that's like, meh, 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 meh. Life is love. There is nobody. I can't do the washing up because there's nobody. That's not what's being suggested. The character is integral to each body. So Khaleesi has a character and it's integral to her body. And her body is made up from genetics and conditions that have come from the past. So my personality is made up from everything that I've experienced to date and my genetics. And it's always changing, our character. It's always evolving with the environment, and it comes with the body. So when I'm speaking, a character comes about. So a character appears, and you guys all see it, but for me, it doesn't feel like a character is particularly speaking. It's like there's this emptiness, and then in that there's these sounds and like movements happening, but there is a character that's formed. Now, if I was going to communicate to you about my day, that also informs you of a character, and the way my character sees the day is from conditioning, is from what she watches and reads and how she interacts with people. And that arises with the body. So if someone said, "How are you, Lisa?" there would be a response that comes from the body. But then, and the body is seemingly affected through time, but actually the functioning of it, the appearance of it, is all happening in this moment. I know that seems really complex. So say if, like Khaleesi, or say use myself. So say something, I mean, I'm always using myself as an example. I end up sounding like I've got a lot of issues. So let's use Khaleesi to get it off me for a bit. I've got no one else to use as an example. I can't use my partner. So we use Khaleesi. So with Khaleesi, she's a wild dog from Thailand, genetically wild as well as she grew up wild. And what I mean by genetically wild is that she's not a domesticated breed. Most of our dogs in Europe are domesticated breeds, and if they're not domesticated breeds, they're mixes of domesticated breeds. Whereas Khaleesi is not a domesticated breed, so she's not been selectively bred to be a pet. So she's a little different from dogs, domesticated dogs. And then she also grew up on the streets. And so she has very strong instinct to hunt. She has pointy ears, which means she's more interested in hunting than the floppy dog ears. The floppy-eared dogs. Floppy dog ears, if everyone knew what I meant. And she's got a strong predisposition to being possessive of everything that she owns or she believes she owns. She's always like reclaiming something as hers. And we call that character, but it's actually what it is in the body, its responses, patterns responding in the moment. So it's her response, her usual bodily response that happens, and it creates the appearance of a character. So Khaleesi's character, I would be like, is like a very proud dog, very independent, very aloof, possessive, jealous, sweet, funny, loving. So these are qualities that I would describe as her character, but that's something that's appearing in the body. So it's being watched by something. It's not actually you. So this is what our characters are. And Khaleesi was also traumatized as a puppy by many things, being a street dog. And she carries that. So she's very afraid of random objects. So if there's like piles of rocks, she really is afraid of piles of rocks, of like rubbish, these types of things. So something most probably happened to her when she's younger. And this actually creates a characteristic as well. It's kind of funny. Me and my partner laugh at it. It's maybe a bit mean that we're laughing at her trauma, but we laugh because we're like, I can see she's afraid of something. And I'm like, what the hell are you afraid of, Khaleesi? There's nothing. And then I suddenly see a big tree trunk or rocks or something or a bag. And so I go and touch it and she's like, okay, it's okay. And this creates character. The same for all of you. So say if you had parents, very detached parents growing up that weren't very supportive of you, maybe you developed a very detached personality to not be reliant on other people. And the way that you might frame that in a story about yourself is, I'm very independent and I'm very self-assured. I can do a lot of things by myself. I don't need to rely on other people. And that's your character. And there's nothing wrong with character. We all have character. And the problem that I have with non-duality is that most people try to deny character in some sort of way just because it's so hard to communicate about, I think. And maybe like I had in the beginning when I had awakening, that I was so obliterated that I didn't really know how to phrase it. And from listening to other teachers, there was misunderstanding in me intellectually, and I didn't deal with the character side of things. I didn't understand it. I had to work it out, and it led to mistakes, it led to downfalls, it led to being hurt, it led to me readjusting the way I saw things. And now I think it's really important to talk about this thing called character. So whatever traumas you've had, whatever past experience you had, whatever personality dysfunctions you have, don't have to go with awakening. What goes is the attachment to that. And then after the awakening, what can happen is these things can expand and change, just like everything. So when you've had the awakening, more than likely they'll expand and change and evolve, but it doesn't have to be. It could be that for the rest of your life these same problems arise or these same dynamics arise, but maybe in a lighter variation, maybe easier to resolve, and maybe with more consciousness, but maybe not. I'm sorry. And that's okay too. It's not that. When we're speaking about non-duality, you're speaking about this seeking dynamic, which is connected to the personality structure. So if you've got, like, say, a fear of dogs, maybe when you're identified with that, when you believe that's who you are and you really believe that you're going to die and the dog's going to kill you, then this becomes like really super intense. So say when you're playing your computer game, like I'm playing this little, like, I don't know what it is, a blob game at the moment. It's quite fun. But when I'm playing it, I get really involved in it. So there was this one little worm that comes out and eats you, and it gives me such a shock every time. Like, I'm so into it, and then I'm like, whoa, like every time it comes out to eat me. And but there is some part of me that knows that that's not me. So the blob is like going around and then getting eaten by the worm. And even though it gives me a fright, so even though I'm involved in it, there's another part of me that knows that that's not me. And so it's not like terrified and like really overwhelmed by this worm and getting paranoia all the time that a worm is going to appear and eat me with big teeth that are like so that's the same for awakening, you could say, is that prior to awakening, you're really invested in the character, and everything that happens in the character's life is super important to you. And then this dynamic of seeking appears, which believes that happiness is found in pleasures and avoiding pain. And then this creates this like strong identification with the person. It's like it becomes so super important that you're like really like in the game. It's like I go inside the game and become this little blob. Whereas the awakening is like a detachment from that, seeing that the character isn't real, that what's happening to the character isn't real, that the doership isn't real, and that everything that you thought was you isn't actually you. It's an experience happening in you. But the character still plays the game and still has wants and desires, even though there's a removal from it. So it's still like if it's getting chased by a big dog, it's still running, screaming. It's not like sitting there meditating, being like, and if it has a trauma about people speaking to you in a certain way or belittling you, there will still be upsetness about it. What stops, what breaks, is this attachment to that's who you are, and then this seeking to only have people say nice things about you and not have people say bad things about you. The reason that I think it's important to distinguish that, which I do many times in my talks, is because I think it can create issues in the human psychology if you believe that you're going to become an enlightened person and somebody that is always peaceful and never has issues. I think that this is like not good. And then also if the person believes that it's not the doer, that can be relaxing for the person. I can understand that can take a great weight off the person. So it's okay to believe it to an extent to relieve the psychology. But if you really believe that you're not the doer, then I believe that problems can arise in your life, because the person has the appearance of doership. So it has the appearance of picking up the cup, of choosing between one thing and the other. But there's another knowing that's beyond the person, that there is no person choosing, there is nobody doing it, it's all happening. But the person has to act as if it has free will. I don't know how much of that makes sense. This is when I open it up to questions to see what makes sense to people and what doesn't. Yes, I think that's the end I've got to say on that. So I'm open to questions. So if anyone has a question, please write in. Hi Nick, you asked where water came from. Most of the water on this planet comes from comets from outer space bombarding our planet when it's very young and just starting to cool. So the water molecules in your drink actually come from outer space, about 3 to 4 billion years old. It's space drink. Isn't that cool? It's really cool, Nick. It's really cool. Thanks for saying that. Hi Dennis. A couple of questions related to the person. Are we the witness observer experiencing this? How do you know that we are the person? How do we know that we are the person? Much love, Dennis of Kentucky. I don't think it's you that knows that you are the person. I think that there is just an energetic sucking in So if you think back to when I play my game, it's like you become so sucked in to the life of Dennis that it just feels like you are the person. Like, my name is Dennis and I'm from Kentucky. Whereas that's not actually the truth of the situation. The truth is that you are simply here experiencing, and that's the answer that you give in time. But Kentucky doesn't exist right now. Dennis doesn't exist right now. Your room doesn't exist. Your chair doesn't exist. The computer doesn't exist. There is only what is that exists, which is experiencing itself. So there is a consciousness of itself and this sense of itself, this beingness. Hello, Laura. Hi, Lisa. What determines the happening of this energetic shift? It just happens when it's supposed to happen, or one has to go through an apparent process in this reality? I don't know, to be honest. It seems like for a lot of people, there is this process of letting go or surrender, which you'll often hear about. But yeah, I don't know. That is mysterious. It's the $1 million question. If somebody managed to answer that, then everyone would be jumping in. Like, everyone would be doing it, because it's such a relief to not be the person. Thank you for your question, Laura. If you want to call in, please just write to me, call me. I would love to speak to anyone that wants to give it a go, give it a shot. I can imagine it's nerve-wracking. You can actually change your name in Skype. I don't know how, but you can just look it up now on the internet. I think you click on it and you can change your name so your name isn't identified. And then also you could put like a blanket over your mouth and speak through the microphone. Hi, Asia. Oh, Asha. Hey, nice to hear from you. Hello, Lisa. I'm watching from Poland. We were neighbours in Thailand at the viewpoint in Sritano. Just wanted to say hello. Yeah, I remember. I know. Hello. I still watch your videos and listen to you. That's so nice to hear from you. Sure. I thought you were in California last time I heard. Thank you for writing in. Krishna. Hi, Lisa. I keep going back and forth with non-duality and the tantric way. How do I just abide in single way? How do I just abide in single way out of these? I don't know what you mean by that. Maybe you could just clarify that last sentence. Hello, Richard. Hello, Richard from Oregon. Thanks. Hi, Richard. Nice to hear from you. Hi, Lisa. I have a hard time accepting my family's rejections and projections about me. They can't accept that I don't believe in their religion. Can you give some advice about that? Thanks, Hannah, for your question. Are you Hannah that I've spoken to quite a few times before? No. So this is a personal question, It's not so much about non-duality. Often our minds are mixing up the two different elements. What happens in this personal question is, because I'm presuming, but I might be wrong, Hannah, that there is identification with the person, so that makes that experience a lot more intense, because you have forgotten who you are. You could feel like your happiness is dependent on having your parents accept you, whereas this isn't the case. Your true happiness is this moment, is who you are, is remembering who you are. But in the character terms, that is painful, and this will create energetic pain in your body. So when we experience energetic pain, we experience it in different chakra areas. So the rejection of love, so by you rejecting their religion and them rejecting you, it's most will be a rejection of love. It will create tension in your heart when you think about them or when you're around them, which will be painful. And you can look into that, and you can explore that and see what feelings you have there that go to their depth. Like, so in childhood, for example, you felt that maybe there's an injury where you felt like you were only loved because you followed their religion, or you believed or did what they said. Then maybe deeper than that, you felt like if you didn't follow their religion, you would be abandoned. And then if you go deeper than that, if you're abandoned from this society and nobody loves you, then you'll die. I don't mean to be making it a joke, but I'm just like saying that's the drama of what happens deep down in a lot of these dynamics. And that will exist energetically in your body. So when you come in contact with your parents, when you come in contact with someone that treats you like that, and when you think about it, that area in the heart will shut. And there's nothing wrong with it shutting. That doesn't have anything to do with enlightenment or not enlightenment or freedom. There can be freedom, and there can be the pain of somebody rejecting you, the pain of your parents treating you in that way. But what happens when you detach from the feeling and you remember who you are, then that doesn't feel like who you are. So when you're attached to that, you feel that's who you are, that you are somebody that is rejected, that you are somebody that's been abandoned by your parents because of your religion and not accepted by your parents. And then because you feel like that's who you are, you then seek for pleasure to find relief. So you seek for people to accept you, or you seek to reject them, to put them down, to stop them hurting you. And then there's this seeking energy that starts, and your mind will get obsessed with it, talking about it a lot. There will be build-ups of energy in it. It will make it last longer, become more intense. But when you see that who you are is this moment, this is no longer you. So even though it has importance to assert yourself with your parents and have a healthy relationship with your parents, it's not you. So its importance is less. Who you are is this moment, and this feeling cannot kill you. When you're totally identified with your feelings, it feels almost like your feelings can kill you. I hope that makes sense. Hi, Lisa. I'm so happy to hear a more balanced message on non-duality. Thank you so much for what you're doing. You're a breath of fresh air. Oh, thank you. Satyamai, I think. I really appreciate that. I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. I'm sure most of you realize by now that I have dyslexia, and sometimes even when I'm speaking, I get my words muddled up or back to front, or when I'm pronouncing people's names, it's a disaster. I'm also English of conditioning, and English are renowned for being ignorant with non-English spelt names. Something that me and my partner were laughing about recently was that I didn't fully realise, so this is, I might have told you this before, I didn't fully realise that I've lived in mainland Europe for quite a few years now, and I didn't fully realise that each country and each language has different names for each country and each city around the world. Some are the same. If they're like really old cities, they can be the same in each language, but most of the time they're different. So Germany is actually called Deutschland in German. So England is actually called England. And in France, they call London Londres. But there's many different examples of this. And like Thailand is obviously not called Thailand in German. And I really didn't really realize this. And I suspect that this could be because it is a way of me protecting my feelings a bit. I suspect that a lot of people don't know that. But that could be me just like trying to feel better about the fact that I didn't realize that all countries have their own names for each other country and each other city. And my partner was like, why would you think that that's not the case, that all countries and all cities have got English names? And I was like, yeah, I'd never thought about that before. We get a bit the English sometimes are a bit presumptuous, because English is, I think, the most or the second most spoke language. Maybe Chinese is the most now around the world. So yeah, but thank you very much for your compliment, Hannah. Yeah, thank you so much. Much love to you, Lisa. You speak with more and more clarity every week. There is no Dennis of Kentucky saying this. Ha. Yeah, there's no Dennis. There is no Dennis. It could be that I speak with more clarity, but it also could be that Dennis is gaining more clarity. Could be both ways as well. It could be equally. I certainly feel like I've evolved a lot since the first time I speak. Sometimes when I hear the videos of when I first started speaking, one, I think they're really beautiful because it was so fresh and radical and sweet, but also there's a sadness sometimes because I feel like there is a lot more that I could be teaching, and maybe I'll feel like that again in another 10 years, and maybe that's a good thing, that we keep evolving and progressing. Nice. Hi, Raphael. Are you saying that it's better to let go of effort? In Dutch, we have a word that's closer to what I mean with effort in spanning. Like, it's like the attention and nerve all focus on one thing and tense up. Wow, that's quite a word. In spanning. Like a spasm or something, or a seizure. Sorry, excuse me. No, I'm not applying that you let go of efforting. Efforting is happening every day for everybody. We all have to put effort into our lives. Sometimes when we're having awakening experiences and going through processes, then that can fall away. I know for me, there was many years of sitting on my backside doing sweet FA, which means nothing. But that's not what I'm implying. Effort is part of being alive. Like you could say everything is efforting to create and being creative. So there needs to be effort to do the washing up, to go to the toilet, to eat your dinner, to cook your dinner, to walk the dog, to do your business, to go to work, to maintain friendships. So I'm not implying that. What I am saying is that, no, I'm not implying that at all. But what I do speak about is that there is no doer doing that. So there is nobody efforting. and putting effort into their life. Like, who is this person that you always think is there doing their life? Who? It always makes me want to go, who let the dogs out? Who? 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 Boop, boop, boo, doop. Boop, boop, boo, doop. Hi, Stanios. Stan. It's hard for me to see your name written. I know we've met before, Stan. Nice to hear from you, but Stanislas, when I see it written, it confuses me. Hi, Lisa. This is Stan from France. Glad to hear you tonight. Heart sensitive due to breaking up a beautiful heart opening relationship. Strong need to abide in awareness due to strong pain. Thank you so much for your deep and light spirit. Can you speak about pain and what it teaches us? Yes. So pain taken in the right vein, is what teaches us in the most deep way. Like, we go to school and we learn from books, and I'm not a fan of school, as you might know. I don't think any dyslexic will ever be a fan of school. I actually think for a lot of kids it's cruelty, school. But not for all kids. When we go to school, we learn from books. And I think this is fickle learning, actually. Like, this is shallow learning. I think what we really learn from, and what I've found I really learn from, is doing things. And then what we learn from even more is when we screw something up and when we make a mistake. So I write, as many of you know, creatively. And I've been writing for like 25 years. I'm now 40. And I've had some successes, but not that many successes, like some little successes. And every time I write and I make a mistake, I grow so much from it. So I write and then I see the problems in it, and I grow and I grow and I get better. And this is really when we master our craft, is by staying with it through the pain, staying with it through the failure, and seeing that each failure is a way to grow and helps teach us how to get better. When I was younger, before I got into this subject, I used to give up as soon as I failed. I thought, oh, I'm not just naturally good at this, then I give up. And this is the wrong attitude, not just with writing, but with life itself. Like, we do this so much with pain, like rejecting pain as if it's the enemy, whereas pain is actually our teacher. So if you prick yourself on a thorn, you then learn that you shouldn't grab hold of the roses, the rose stem, or on the stinging nettle. And it's the same in relationships. Like, every time your heart breaks, you get the opportunity to look at your thought processes and the way that you see the world, and the way that you relate to the world. Like, heartbreak is such an amazing place to grow and to forgive and to see your dynamics. Often when relationships end, we have blame onto one another. But really, there is no source of blame. I'm not trying to deny like domestic abuse or violence in relationships or anything like that, but I'm just trying to suggest that all relationships are like this combined energy. It doesn't mean that we don't prosecute somebody if they've done domestic abuse or something. I'm not suggesting that. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I'm trying to say that everybody comes to a relationship with a particular energy. And it's unlikely that it can happen, but it's mostly people that get into, say, violent relationships get into it because that's what they were taught in childhood. They were taught low boundaries and bad boundaries, and I mean, there could be many variations of that. and if you can be open to seeing that, then you can begin to grow and expand from the conditioning in which you grew up from. You don't ever have to get over this conditioning. It's like every time you're doing it not only for yourself, you're doing it for society, you're doing it for the kids, you're doing it for everybody else, your next relationships. It's not something where we get to the end of our dynamics. It's something that can always be expanded on, and each new relationship and the ending of each relationship will bring us closer to that, as long as we see it as that. If we see it as the devil, then we'll become more and more closed. But if we see them always as an opportunity to flower, always to grow beyond that. And it is really painful ending relationships. Like, everybody has a desire, enlightened or not, for secure attachments in this life, for intimacy with people. And it's very painful when we lose someone that we're intimate with. And pain, or emotional pain, resides inside the body. So in heartache can be in the heart, or fear or anxiety can be in the stomach when you break up or not feeling like you can express yourself. So it exists in your torso and in your body. And so when you're now in pain, the body really desperately wants to get away from that pain, but it's just seeing that pain in the body, that this is what's happening, giving it time and space to be there. And you can act out of it, that's okay, but also seeing the urge to act out of it, the urge to get rid of it, the urge to do something about it. This is not who you are. You're not that child that didn't get enough attention, or was put down, or loved too much, or given too much. You're not that. Who you are is this moment, is this boundlessness, is this freedom. And then your body has conditions which are coming up now. And just allowing them to come up, but knowing that's not who you are. That's conditions of the body. And that's not you. You're not guilty for it. You didn't do anything wrong. They're just appearing. They're simply appearing. Nice. Thank you, Stan, for your question. Hey Amy, hi Lisa. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean when you say things don't exist? Do you mean that they have no inherent objective reality that's separate from anything else? I'm not sure that I actually understand this idea that everything doesn't exist. I think it's just language, but it always confuses me. Yeah, thanks Amy for your question. Do you mean that they have no inherent objective reality that's separate from anything else? Yeah, I suppose that's what I mean. It's hard to imagine that sentence. I'm sure that's how you feel when I speak. Yeah, there is nothing that actually exists now. Like when you throw out thinking about anything, what is here? Yes, I can call you Brian. Just let me get my microphone. 1 moment. My headset.
Hey Lisa,
Hey, Brian.
the ringtone was super loud, so it scared the living bejesus out of me.
That's funny. At least you had some type of warning that I was going to do it.
Yeah, yeah, it was out of nowhere, but yeah. Um, yeah, I was kind of nervous about calling in. I was like, oh, what if I expose too much? So I'm gonna try to,
Yeah.
yeah, not be
I
too.
mean, that's what I try to warn people, because I can imagine it can be a little traumatizing if you do that, and that's the last thing I want.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's okay. I mean, nobody knows my last name, but um,
Yeah.
so I think, yeah. So my question kind of is, I did. I was talking to Harold,
Yeah.
and like this fear came up, like very, but not just fear. It was also like a lot of energy, and it seemed to be around control.
Mm.
And it was nauseating. Like it was really nauseating, actually. Um, and I remember internally being like, let's just close that Pandora's box right now, because like this is like too much. But
Yeah.
um, I sort of now, so I'm gonna make a story out of it now, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, go for it.
So it seems like, after that, like sort of opening and those energies arising and me being like, oh, I can't deal with this. Like my things seem to get a little darker. Like my mood seemed to get more somber. I got like a little depressed. And I wonder if that's correlated, or if I was just believing in a story and then that was happening. But really, what I want to look at is like how that control is working, and like how that's making me unhappy,
Mm.
and like ultimately how to let go of that. But that's not in
Yeah.
that's not in my control.
Yeah, it's not in your control. Yeah, and this is what happens to us. So at a young age, like, so we identify at like maybe 3 or 4. It's an energetic thing, which is most probably genetically passed down. And then what happens to us is when we begin to become self-conscious. So do you remember as a child, like for me, I remember my parents used to put me on the reins. Like they used to
Like
like
just
put
tell
reins, yeah, around my wrists, like, and put a lead on me, like.
like actually, or you mean
Yeah, it's
metaphor?
quite. No, they did. They put the reins on me. We call them reins in England. Like I can't think of another lead. Maybe you could call it. Yeah, and they do. This is quite common with children. You see it sometimes, like with children that are like really hyper. When you're walking along, they have like something tied to their arm or to their backpack or something, so you can keep hold of them.
Okay.
And when they used to do this, sorry, sorry. Eee! When they used to do this, I used to throw myself down on the floor and have a tantrum. Like, and I remember I would like be rolling around the floor, like like I was almost being sizzled in a frying pan, like and screaming and crying, and I didn't care who I did it in front of. I just did it and didn't, and yeah, I don't remember how often I used to tantrum, but I remember that I used to tantrum about when they put the leads on me. And we didn't have self-consciousness about it at the time. It was just that, like, at that time, even though there was identification, most probably, there's still not a self-consciousness that's aware that other people are looking at us. So therefore, like, our emotions are just wild and free. And then as we begin to get older, we begin to be taught to rein them in, which is appropriate. It's appropriate that we learn how to deal with our emotions and how to control our emotions.
It can be dangerous.
If you don't learn how to control them.
Well, no, if you just like stuff it all, hold it all in.
Yeah. And then another thing happens to us where we don't learn to deal with them in a functional way, which I think happens to most people. So we're not in a place where we can express our feelings and our thoughts to people. And we're very young, so we've not got very big intelligence yet to be able to reflect on these things. Yeah. So we get taught by our parents and by schooling that we have to be a particular way and that we can't express certain emotions. So what happens in our system is we begin to narrate a story of who we are, and then we begin to deny anything that doesn't match that story.
Yeah.
And this is where it begins to become dangerous, because we tell this story so often and so many times it really feels real, and we don't know the difference between what's happening and that story. So it feels like that story and what's happening are one and the same thing. And it becomes so powerful that we can be really angry with someone, and in our thoughts world, we can be telling them that we're having a great time and that we love them. And we kind of believe that, but deep down, like, you're really angry with that person and you really hate them. So this is what humans can do. I always say we because I don't want to say like you and be accusatory. So I try to say we as an inclusivity.
It's probably just like that anger with like another person, like, oh, I want to kill this person or something, that can be happening at the same time that you're trying to act sociable. Like, I could see that.
Yeah, but sometimes it can even happen where, and this happens a lot in people, where the story is so strong that they don't even know that they're having thoughts and feelings of wanting to kill the other person. So a good example of that is passive aggression.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really not conscious. And if you ask the person, they really think they're being nice. If you were to begin to speak with them and get them to look into their body, then they might begin to feel that they're not comfortable and that they're unhappy. But most of the time the body has been shut out of experiencing, and so the story becomes really strong.
Yeah.
And the unconscious is so deep. So deep.
I mean, I could see it. I could feel it in myself sometimes. Like, I know maybe ultimately it doesn't have anything to do with somebody else, but I can walk down the street and I can feel like this aggression come up towards a stranger because I'll feel unsafe or something, and some part of me will just like want to like attack that person.
Yeah, and that's really quite deep. That realization. Like, so most people in society don't realize that. They're not even conscious that they're getting angry with people. They're only conscious they're getting angry with people when the people, say, bump into them, and then their response is, "You motherfucker!" Blah, 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 blah. And then they know they're angry. But prior to that, they didn't really realize anger was building in them. So that's really amazing.
Like, so I have it with a lot of people. So it doesn't, if somebody looks like even a little bit threatening, I'll be like, oh yeah, I feel defensive now, and I would attack this person if I some conceited form of self-defense or something. Yeah. So I wonder if I do sometimes wonder, like, if that's normal, because if people pass each other in the street all the time and have these these maybe unconscious or not, but like these notions happening constantly.
I think that everybody's story is different. So you'll get some people that are walking along and they're very paranoid about what other people are thinking about them, but they don't necessarily feel anger. So yours is quick to like attack the other person internally. Some people can feel very guilty and very ashamed, and they don't like to go outside the house. Some people can deal with it by being obsessively concerned about the way they look and the way they appear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think all those things I kind of do. But then I can also see, like, I've been doing this delivery job, and like I bike around, and sometimes I can completely switch. Like it seems like I switch gears like completely. Like suddenly I'll feel, I'll feel like I've switched realities and be like, I forgive everyone, and like
Yeah.
everything's beautiful, and then suddenly none of that is
And
real anymore.
I think that's to do with the seeking energy. So when you begin to open up, so when you become less attached to the person, then the person relaxes and these dynamics relax, and then you feel more safe because you're more at home, and then
Yeah,
these dynamics relax to an extent. And then when they're really real, it's when you're really energetically contracted to the body. It doesn't mean that when you feel really relaxed that your defenses won't be naturally to go back to aggression, but I would assume that's involving the seeking energy. Like when you feel more at home in terms of consciousness in this moment, then there is less defensiveness in you. Even though your personality structure might always, for the rest of its life, even if it's free for the rest of its life, have a tendency towards defense. Like when you feel more secure and more at home in consciousness, then there is less defensiveness acting out through your body. When you feel like when there's more seeking energy and you feel more detached from consciousness and more identified with the person, then there's more intense defensiveness. This can either be triggered internally or externally. It can be because there's less threatening people around you, or it can be internally because there's more expansion.
yeah. It seems like it's all. It seems like it's sometimes accessible internally, and also it's like the use of music or like listening to chants or something like this. And there is then seeking that goes on around this as well, because then as soon as that like falls away, then I go and seek for that state again, or seek to recreate that experience.
Yeah.
Um, but regardless, like this, yeah, I don't know what the exact nature of it is, but it seems to revolve around this like this sense of control, and it's probably a sense of leadership as well.
Yeah. And the control and the doership is found in the solar plexus. So this is the energy area which needs work. And
Yeah,
and that's also contains depression, like frustration and anger. So this sense, so when it's in its negative, it can be rageful, angry, frustrated, and it can also be depressed, like this is hopeless, this is pointless, I want to kill myself. So it can be all of that. And when it's in its positive, it feels more like an ease with life, like you can do it, you can achieve, you can complete whatever you need to complete. It feels energized.
So it's back to basically I've been doing some of this chakra breathing,
Yeah.
chakra breathing,
Yeah.
which I can really feel can make a difference.
Yeah. It is really intense stuff though. This is like energy of your family that's coming up. It's your mom, your dad, your grandparents, your great grandparents. Like this is their behaviors were passed on to you genetically and then socially, because the way your grandparents raised your mum will have had an effect on the way your mum raised you, and the way your great grandparents raised your grandparents will have an effect on them, then your mum, then you.
Yeah.
So and then you could take it out to the broader aspect and say that you're releasing the karma of humanity, because they ultimately come from humanity. And then if you go even further back, you could say really you're releasing the karma of life. So it's like a really big task that you undertake, and it's just being really gentle with yourself.
Yeah, I think it's if I'm honest, like I don't really know what I'm doing, so it feels like, I just it kind of feels overwhelming because it seems like I can't really I don't really understand what's happening energetically a lot of the time, so I don't know if it's coming from where it's
Yeah.
coming from exactly what, you know,
But that would be a very controlling response.
yeah, and then trying to
Because
fix.
rather than going with the flow and trusting that life is taking care of it,
Yeah,
you feel like you need to be in control of it, and then it feels chaotic. So
yeah,
it's just seeing that these thoughts, these patterns and these beliefs affect everything that's happening. So everything that you think when you feel contracted will be more than likely in that vein. So what's coming up and what can be seen is that the controlling energy is coming up again. I feel out of control. I don't know how to do this. That's very solar plexus speaking. And then also, so noticing and feeling that, but then noticing that that's appearing in stillness.
yeah. There was like a little bit of and this is then again the controlling energy. Like there was a frustration with, like I was talking to Harold and this came up and I was like, well, this seems like the opportunity then to like open to it and release it, or and then like the story went like, oh, it was too intense, I couldn't release it or whatever, so
Mm.
um yeah, and then I beat myself up about that, so
Yeah, yeah. And again, that's controlling ideas, like that you are the doer and that it was your job to do it. So just noticing these ideas and just noticing that they're not true. What is true, who you truly are, is this emptiness now looking through. And they're trying their best to stay identified with the person, for the person to believe that that's who you are, not because they're bad or anything, it's just that that's the way they function. That's the energy of them.
yeah, yeah, I guess even yeah, I can see how the whole like little fight I'm having with myself is just kind of it's the same game, it's the same controlling game.
Yeah.
So what it really comes down to is like kind of what you're saying also is just having this trust in life,
Mm.
or like how it unfolds naturally.
Mm.
Like that. Um, yeah, and if I ask how to do that more, then that's trying to do.
Yeah, it's happening. Like doing all these practices,
Yeah,
speaking with people about it.
yeah. All right. Thank you, Lisa.
With pleasure. It's always lovely to speak with you,
Appreciate
Brian.
silence also. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
lots of
Thank you.
love.
Much love. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
We take another call. So Stan says, thank you for your answer.
Hello.
Hello. Hey,
Nice of you to take my call.
it's a pleasure. Can I ask how I say your name?
Sure, Marnix.
Marnix. Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
perfect. I'm from the Netherlands, by the way.
Ah, that last person was from the Netherlands as well.
Brian, oh really?
Yeah. Or maybe
Oh,
he
he has
didn't
a
want me
very
to say that.
American accent.
Yeah, he did.
That's
Tried
funny.
to keep people anonymous, and then I'm like, oh yeah, he's
Oh.
from. Let me tell you his whole name and address.
I also wrote out my question, but it's maybe easier to talk about it.
Yeah.
So a few months ago, I was listening quite intensely to Tony and Jim.
Yeah.
And at moments when the clarity is there, when the person is not present, it actually feels very relaxing and comforting.
Yeah.
And it's all, it's like, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But still, the vast majority of time there, the person is there. And if I take that to be the truth, then it resulted in maybe depressive feelings. So I realized that, and at a certain moment, the apparent conclusion was, okay, I'll just pretend whenever the clarity is not there, that I actually have a choice to do things. And that helps because, well, it seemingly helps. I'm less depressed, or not depressed, actually. It's interesting to see how it's almost schizophrenic, how I could be completely fine with everything, and then it could flip the total other way around.
Yeah.
So my question is, pretending to have control, does that have
Help.
any effect on or not help? Like it hinders the process of it settling in fully.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to these questions. I just can give my opinions, really, but I don't know the definite answer. You'll get some teachers that say yes, that will hinder, and some teachers that say no, it won't, and I don't really know. My intuitive response that comes out is that like radical non-duality or neo-advaita, I think it's often called, which I really love and I think is really beautiful. Like it's so beautiful in the way that it expresses non-duality. So you can like listen to it, and you can. It's almost like when I used to go and listen to neo-advaita teachers, it was like it was on what they were speaking about was on the tip of my tongue. It was like my whole body would vibrate with energy as they spoke about it. And there was something in me that just knew it was true. But also for me, it created deep depression as well. And my intuitive feeling towards that is the reason it creates depression is because the person takes that on board. So what often neo-advaita teachers would say is, if you leave the room with this message, then you've completely misinterpreted it. So when the person believes that life is meaningless, when the person believes that it doesn't have choice, when the person believes that it can't do anything, then this is depression. These are the thought processes that lead to depression. But that's not actually what they mean. But it's so hard for the person to listen to stuff, for the thought processes and the character to listen to stuff and not embody what it listens to. In a way, it's not doing anything wrong. It's just trying to fulfill what you're trying to learn. You know, if you were learning mathematics, it will try its best to understand that and take that on board. Whereas non-duality is really different. So it's when you take on board non-duality, it creates depression in the person, because if the person believes it's meaningless, like the person, the body, then it means that it will have very little energy or momentum to do anything.
Yeah, what I almost noticed was that as if there was the character with its arms crossed in front of his chest, like, I'm not participating, I don't exist. but that's of course participating.
Yeah, exactly. And that will actually, what happens when we go into these types of modes, that will actually more than likely have been a response that you have had as a child. So it's like, as a child, when your parents didn't do, I can't say that I'm right, I might not be right about this, but just as an example to other people, when your parents said you couldn't have something, or they told you off for something, or you didn't like what they said or something, then maybe your response, or one of your response was, then I'm not participating, then withdrawing. And that's, so most of the time, and I'm not saying this is what's happening for you, but most of the time when we hear this message, we then embody it into the character and the character's way of being. So it suits the character in a way, even though it doesn't on the ultimate level. Like, it suits the character to then be like, well, I'm not going to participate. But then if you look at your life, you might notice that when your partner does something you don't like, then you have this energy of withdrawing and not wanting to participate. And you see that you begin to notice that everything that you hear externally is always going to be interpreted through the filter of your character. And non-duality is about going beyond the character. So it's not a character quality. And this is the hardest thing when expressing non-duality and when listening to non-duality. Even though I can't express it any differently, and they can't express it any differently, and you can't hear it any differently on the ultimate level, like, it's very difficult to communicate these different levels of non-duality, if you want to call it levels, even though there is ultimately no level. When I say level, I mean when the person is interpreting it. So, and they are related, non-duality and the person, because when you're identified with the person, everything will become exacerbated by that. So it will become bigger. So every pleasure that you want will become more important to you, and every pain that you avoid will become more painful for you. And that's what we call, or a lot of people would call, suffering. This identification with the person and the belief that pleasure is freedom and that pain is hell. I don't know if how that fits for you and how that resonates for you.
No, it does.
So what I normally find is that people that have got into the subject of non-duality, they've got into it because life isn't working for them. And there could be many, many reasons why life isn't working for them. And it's understanding the injuries that have happened on the human level from life not working for them. So understanding that and acknowledging that and feeling the pains of that and becoming more conscious of it. And then at the same time, realizing that that's not who you are. It tends to be, if you just go for non-duality, then the seeking will stay in place because the pains that you're experiencing in life are strong, and so the seeking stays identified with that. As you begin to relax your personality structure and relax your issues with your life or with society, then the seeking dissipates, and then it tends to be, it's not more of a chance, but it's easier for non-duality to be heard. Like when you're suffering lots, like you can't hear how beautiful this moment is, or that this is freedom. Does that make sense, or is that sound...
No, absolutely, yeah, very clear.
So it's not, I would suggest, if you're resonating with like a neophyte, like listen to it, but I would also suggest, working out what's going on the character level and what effects non-duality has on the character level. But when you're listening to non-duality, and when you're resonating with it, there is a meditation that's happening deeper than the character level. So I would always suggest working on the two. And the way that I like to work with the person is through the chakra system. Okay, I like that. But there's all different methods out there, and all of them seem to have validity because there is no truth. So there's so many things to heal or to understand what's happening for you on a personal level, in your stories and the way you see yourself.
Do you have a suggestion for what to look up for the chakra system you are referring to?
Yeah, on my website, I have like a page, a reference page, and I have some books there that I recommend on chakra system, and with all of it, you have to kind of ignore some of the stuff I find. Like some of it's very prescriptive and some of it's
dogmatic, or
really dogmatic. But there are some gems in there, and some, like, so there can be some real clarity from learning these things. And I keep meaning to update the reference page more. Like there's lots of great things that I recommend to people, but all different types of practices and therapies that to do simultaneously with listening to non-duality.
And at a certain moment, there was a choice for you to, when you have these talks, to at least to a certain extent go along with the concept of there being a person or a free will. Because when I listen to Jim, for instance, I have the feeling that there's no concession whatsoever to the existence of a separate self.
Yeah. Can you just ask that question again? The beginning part of it?
So I watched a video of you from a long time ago. It was released not too long ago. I think the seminar was called "Who's Driving the Bus?"
Yeah.
And if I listen to more recent videos, then I see that you've steered a bit away from the harsh, harsh truth.
Yeah.
So that has to do with your own experience of it
creating
a depressive feeling inside.
So, but I think originally you said like the choice, the moment of choice. Yeah. What happened was, so I've been teaching for I think roughly around 10 years now, and I think that was maybe like 3 or 4 years in that I began to change the way I spoke. And what happened was there were lots of different things that happened. There was getting used to the energetic shift that happened. There was experiences that I had, and I couldn't quite put things together in my mind, like with radical non-duality and some of my experiences. So there was a questioning then of the way I thought and the way that I spoke about it. There was a questioning, because I had been brought up for so many years in there is no I, and then there came a moment where I was like, it was like a deepening or a surrendering, where I was like, there is an I, there is an appearance of an I happening here in my experience. So on one level there is no I, and that's so beautiful and so expansive, but there is a character that comes and goes. Like there is this Lisa character, and it could be that I have different experience from Jim and Tony, and I'm totally open to saying that. And it could be they're more advanced. It could also be that they're less advanced. That would be impossible for me to tell. I can't tell. It was like this questioning of that, and then also like personal experiences in my life, like trying to live with this really strong neo-Advaita and then have personal relationships with people. It just became more apparent that there is this appearance of an I, and that doesn't negate that there is also no I. There is also no person happening there. But lots of people can have lots of different judgments on that, and that's really down to them and the way that they feel about that change in the way that I speak. Like I've had lots of criticism and lots of praise for it. So it was like a build-up of things, like most things are, of like questioning. I mean, when you have these awakenings, they're energetic, they're not mental, and they don't come with a manual. So you have to go with everything that you've learned to date. And I was very indoctrinated by There Is No I of Neo-Advaita, and then also like Ramesh Balsaka, that was No Chooser. And that's really beautiful, and I love that teaching. But then there was a questioning and a growth that began to happen in this personality structure. And I feel like what began to happen was I began to step more into my own way of speaking. So before I was a bit more like it wasn't I was copying them. It wasn't.
Yeah,
it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't.
yeah.
Like it was more like it was. I suppose there was an element of copying of what I'd heard before, because I didn't know how to express it. Like it's not a personal thing. It's not like I'm choosing, but there isn't that you can only express with the knowledge that's currently in this body. I can't suddenly start expressing it in Japanese. Like I can't like step out of the experience of this body. Like things happen in apparent cause and effect. So I don't know how clear that is. That's really complex to explain, but
no.
So then that began, and that was like a big relief for me, because to change the way I spoke, because firstly, I noticed with Neo-Advaita, when you express more Neo-Advaita, you attract more people with depressive tendencies. And it was a relief to be able to address that with them on the human level and advise them to go and seek help, or go to do therapies, or to go and help the personality structure. Whereas before there had just been not dealing with that and not looking at that. So that was also a relief, and it changed the audience. Like it changed the people that came and spoke to me. Like it changed the dynamics between me and them. Yeah. So, but I don't think that that Neo-Advaita is wrong. I think it's actually really beautiful. I don't think any way of speaking is right or wrong. I think it's all what's evolving and coming out, and and the most important part of it is that resonance. Like that resonance with who you truly are beyond the person. And it can come out in all different forms and in all different contradictions. And I don't see any of it as right or wrong anymore. I think prior, when I was more into Neo-Advaita and expressing like that, I think I thought that was right. But now I just don't know anymore. It's like it just comes out and we see, and maybe they're more evolved than me, maybe I'm more evolved than them, maybe we're all not evolved at all, and there's aliens looking down on us laughing at our perspectives. Like we just don't know. So yeah.
It's beautiful that there's such a variety of perceptions available, and
it feels
for
a
our
lot
choosing.
Yeah, and that feels a lot softer and a lot more inclusive. But I know from my own memory, when I was expressing like the radical non-duality, it was really pure and honest, and as pure and honest as what I'm speaking now. Like it's just different. It just evolved. The Lisa character evolved, and therefore it changed the expression that came out.
Yeah. Thank you.
With pleasure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, nice. Nice to speak with you and to meet you. Thank you for your questions. I enjoyed answering them.
Same.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so that is enough for this evening. I shall end the stream now. That's 2 hours. And I shall see you next Sunday. There's quite a few questions I didn't answer on Skype. I thought it would be really quiet tonight because everyone would have got their time wrong. So you can send them again next week, and then hopefully I'll answer them then. But thank you. Lots of love. Goodbye.